Yes, I can confirm that he did it. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christiaan Logtmeijer. I work in the Risk Management Implementation Unit with Matti Vainio. And in the next 20 minutes or so, I would like to talk to you through the content and the submission of an application package. I would like to just introduce you to the content and the format of an application, a little bit about the application submission process, and after that I have a few take-home messages for you. The content and the format of an application, it has a couple of main elements, and those main elements, they stem from Article 62 of REACH. First of all, they also form the basis for the conformity check, and in the conformity check we determine whether the application contains all the requirements listed in Article 62 for each use applied for in order to enable the processing of the application by the committees. Essentially, we would like to see a substance identity, the applicant's details, the uses that you apply for, the chemical safety report, including the exposure scenarios, the analysis of alternatives, the substitution plan, if suitable alternatives exist, and something which is called a succinct summary of operational conditions and risk management measures. Joanna, my colleague, will introduce those further to you. It may also include, on basis of Article 62.5, a socio-economic analysis and a justification for not considering certain risks to human health and the environment. You are free, of course, to add in additional information if that helps you to justify your case. There are 3 assessment reports packages which are possible. In the first case, if there's adequate control, it's not demonstrated, and there are no suitable alternatives, you'd have to submit a chemical safety report, the analysis of alternatives, and a socio-economic analysis. If you can demonstrate that you have adequate control and there are no suitable alternatives, then we recommend you to submit a chemical safety report, the analysis of alternatives, and a socio-economic analysis. If adequate control is demonstrated and there are suitable alternatives, you have to submit a chemical safety report, the analysis of alternatives, a substitution plan, and socio-economic analysis. I hope this is readable, but concerning the substance information, that's the first cornerstone of your application. It determines the scope. It determines exactly the substance that you are applying for. The required information has to be sufficient to enable us to identify the substance that you are applying for. It has to be the Annex 14 identifier, the so-called entry number. Section 2 of Annex 6, information, substance name, composition, etc. And for multi-substance applications, we recommend that we ask you to submit an argumentation for substance grouping. You can, of course, also submit other information on other substances and processes, classification and labeling, endpoint information, environmental phase and pathways, ecotoxicological information, etc. The information you need to prepare according to Data Submission Manual, Part 22, how to prepare and submit an AFA. Please be careful. We've updated it last year. It would be a pity if you'd use the one from 2013. We have a new version. Use that. It saves us both quite a lot of work. Furthermore, you have to submit an argumentation for substance grouping. There's a practical guide on that. It's practical guide number 6, how to report read across and categories. The format always in our Euclid 5 and refer to the REACH application for authorization template. The argumentation for grouping to be attached to section, category or section 13 in our Euclid. The applicant information. Basic as it may sound, you want to get this right as well. You don't want to pay the fee and have the decision sent to your neighbor. You need to be very clear who is applying for the authorization. The required information concerns the legal entity details and the UUID, the role in the supply chain, contact person details, and the billing information. The applicant's information fields are in iEuclid, REACH ID, and submission, and in the web forms. Be consistent. Be very consistent in that if there's mistakes, we have to come back to you. And you also have to provide us information on the company size. The instructions for that you can again find in Data Submission Manual Part 22. And there are step-by-step instructions for company size determination. Format, again Reach IT, and IUCLID 5. The legal entity information, the LEOX, uploaded in section 1.1 of IUCLID. Then on the website there's a submission web forms for joint applications. More on that you can find on the AFA support pages on the ECHA website. The uses applied for. Again, a cornerstone of the scope of your application and of the requested authorization. You need to describe us the use name and the number, following the use descriptor system, using the procs, the ERGs, the PCs and the SUs, and a detailed description of each use applied for, condition of uses, technical function, etc. There's two use descriptions. One is the uses that you are applying for, and other is the broad information of uses. Try to be consistent with the procs, so in Euclid, CSR, and worker contributing scenarios, and summary tables, etc. If we wouldn't like to get lost in puzzling about this, because that's going to be additional questions from Rak and Serg back to you, and that is again additional work. The instructions on this you can find again in Data Submission Manual Part 22. How to describe uses in the context of an authorization. There's a separate section on that. And the guidance on information requirements and chemical safety assessment, chapter R12, use descriptor system. Read those through carefully. You can find them on our website. And please follow those instructions. The format is again IUCLID 5, sections 3.5 and 3.10, and there you need to add in those descriptions and the submission web forms in case of joint applications. A chemical safety report. The purpose is to assess the risks to human health and the environment from the use of the substance arising from the intrinsic properties specified in Annex 6. Also, it is to demonstrate that for the use or the substances concerned, the risks are adequately controlled in accordance with Art Section 6.4 of Annex 1, or to demonstrate minimization of emissions and exposures as far as possible, and to show that the likelihood of activities of adverse effects is reduced. The required information is again in the CSR, it's a mandatory report. The hazard data is not needed if you are using the RAC reference DNL dose response relationships. More on this you can also find on the Q&A section of our website, and it is Q&A number 916. Then the chapter 9 of your CSR, the exposure scenarios, and chapter 10, the risk characterization, will be published on ECHA's website in the broad information on use. We will there redact confidential information if possible. The CSR can be the applicant's own CSR, so you develop a specific one for your authorization, a reference to a CSR submitted by the same applicant for registration, or a reference to CSR of a previous applicant. Might be advisable then to contact the previous applicant and not to blindly copy-paste. The consistency of the exposure scenarios, the names and the numbers need to be the same throughout the application. If it's not, we again have to puzzle what's going on, and we'd have to get back to you on that. So please try to be consistent in that. The instructions, there's the guidance on information requirements and chemical safety assessment, and the illustrative example of a chemical safety report. You can find both of them on our website. The format is again guidance on information requirements and chemical safety assessment, part F, the exposure scenario format, the AFA support webpage, preparing an application templates, and the CSR to be attached to section 13 of IUCLID 5. Then coming to the analysis of alternatives, or what we call here the AOA. The purpose is again to determine the availability of suitable alternatives, substances or techniques based on an assessment of the technical feasibility of substitution, economical feasibility of substitution, and the risks of the alternatives. Demonstrate there's a net reduction in risk. The required information, well, the AOA is a mandatory report. You have to attach it, no matter what. It's also published on ECHA's website as part of the BIU. So with the tonnage band per use. Try to redact the confidential information, black it out, and try to minimize that as much as possible, but we will come back to that later. It can be your own AOA or permission to refer to an AOA of a previous applicant. And the remark that I made at the previous slide is here applicable as well. Please do not blindly copy-paste. Check what's going on and ask if you can use it actually. Instructions are on the guidance on the preparation of an application for authorization, more specifically in Chapter 3 of that guidance. The format is the AFA you can find on the AFA support webpage, preparing an application. There you find the template. And you need to attach it to section 310 of IUCLID 5. Then the substitution plan. It's to present the applicant's commitment to take the actions needed to substitute the Annex 14 substance with a suitable alternative substance or technology, if available, within a specified time frame. Very important in terms of a review period. The required information. It is a mandatory assessment when the AOA shows that there's availability of suitable alternatives. It's published on ECHA's website as part of the BIU, and redact your confidential information if you have that in there. You have to use your own substitution plan or the permission to refer to a substitution plan of a previous applicant. The instructions you can find on the guidance on the preparation of an application for authorization. It's in Chapter 4. There's more on the formats on the AFA support web pages. You can find it on the preparing an application templates. And you have to attach it to section 3.10 of IUCLID 5. Then there's one more element. It's a socio-economic analysis. In-house we refer to it as a ECHA. To describe and analyze all relevant impacts of granting versus refusing an authorization. Provide additional socio-economic information to be used in setting the conditions for authorization or defining the review period. It is essential for applications under the socio-economic route to demonstrate that the benefits of continued use outweigh the risks to human health or the environment from the use of that substance. It is published on ECHA's website as part of the BIU with applicant's recommendation on length of review period. Redact confidential information if it applies for you. You can refer to your own ECHA or permission to refer to a ECHA of a previous applicant. And the remark that I made on other slides applies here as well. Do not blindly copy-paste of the entire thing or of elements of it. Guidance on the preparation of socio-economic analysis as part of an application for authorization. This is a separate guidance that you can find on our website. You can find also more information on the AFA support web pages, where you can also find a template. And it is to be attached to section 3.10 of IUCLID 5. If you are covered in one way or another concerning the risks to human health or the environment by the IPPPC or by the Water Framework Directive, you can add that to the application, and then the committees do not have to consider this in their processing. They can just refer back to that coverage and to the IPPPC and to the Water Framework Directive. You can find more about this on the guidance on the preparation of an application for authorization. We do not have a specific template for this, but please, when you write it, attach it again to section 3.10 of IUCLID 5. The application submission process. Very briefly, this is also well explained on the website, and you can actually read about this in further detail there. The first step is to create or update your account in Reach IT. Then, for joint applications, there are web forms to generate the application form and for co-applicants to confirm their participation. Then you need to create your IUCLID dossier, submit your application via Reach IT, you need to finalize together with us the broad information on use, provide us with the broad information on use, we will comment on it, prepare you the broad information on use to be published on the website, and you can actually comment on that as well. That will be explained further on as well. And then last but not least, we'd like you to pay the invoice on time. Concerning point 3, create your iEuclid dossier. Do not do that at the last moment. Try to work that out in advance. Again, everything is explained in the data submission manual. And there is also more on the AFA support web pages, submitting your applications for authorization. A few take-home messages. When you prepare your application, read the guidance on AFA, on SEA, and how to describe uses in the context of authorization. Read them through carefully. If you have questions on that, and if you're on time, you can always request for a PSIS. Read the Q&As. They are updated regularly, and they contain usually the most relevant information. Use the ECHA templates. And on the CSR, the hazard data, again, it's not needed if you actually refer to the RAC reference, DNL, dose-response relationship. That's further explained in the Q&A number 916. Now, be as transparent as possible. It's difficult to deal with applications that contain a lot of confidential information, so try to minimize that as much as possible. Follow the instructions on what information can be considered confidential and how to claim information confidential. And I think there we can refer to a number of documents that you can find under the ECHA website, under the section Evaluating Applications. There's a guidance called Public Sections of the RAC and SEAC Opinion, and the publication of information in applications and during the opinion-making process. But also try to be clear and consistent throughout the entire application. That saves us and you quite a lot of work. Okay, thank you very much.